When my wife Martha died 3 years ago, I thought I had experienced the worst pain a human being could endure. I was wrong. The true agony came later, in slow waves, when I realized that my own children no longer saw me as their father. To them, I had become something else entirely. An apostate, a spiritual threat, a man to be avoided at all costs. I am 73 years old now, and I live alone in a small house on the outskirts of Cleveland. The walls are covered with photographs from a life that feels like it belonged to someone else. There I am, clean-shaven in a suit, standing beside Martha at conventions. There are my children, Michael and Sarah, dressed in their meeting clothes, holding up Watchtower magazines with proud smiles. There is my brother Thomas, his arm around my shoulder, both of us grinning after a particularly successful day of door-to-door ministry. All ghosts now. Living ghosts, which somehow makes it worse. I was a Jehovah's Witness for 47 years. Let that number sink in. Nearly half a century of my life dedicated to the organization, to the truth, to what I believed was God's sole channel on earth. I pioneered. I served as a ministerial servant. I conducted Bible studies. I gave talks at Kingdom Halls across 3 states. I raised my children in the faith, teaching them to reject worldly pursuits and to put Jehovah first in everything. I believed. Oh, how I believed. The irony is that my downfall came not from some great sin, not from adultery or theft or violence, but from asking a question. One simple question during a meeting with the elders, a question about the organization's interpretation of a scripture that didn't seem to align with the original Greek text. I had been studying. Not apostate literature, mind you. Just the Bible itself, using the interlinear translation the Society had published. I noticed something that troubled me. So I asked. Respectfully. Privately. The way we were always told we should approach matters that confused us. Elder Robertson's face had turned red. "Brother Warren," he said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger, "are you questioning the faithful and discreet slave?" "No," I replied, though my voice wavered. "I'm just trying to understand. If we're supposed to make sure of all things, shouldn't we be able to discuss?" "The governing body has already made the truth clear," Elder Jenkins interrupted. "What you're doing right now is allowing Satan to plant seeds of doubt in your mind. Do you want to become an apostate, Brother Warren?" The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Apostate. In our world, it was worse than murderer. An apostate was someone who turned their back on Jehovah, someone who would be destroyed at Armageddon, someone whose very presence could contaminate faithful ones. "Of course not," I said quickly. "I'm sorry. I just wanted to understand." But it was too late. I had shown weakness, doubt. I had questioned. Within a week, there was a judicial committee. I was told that my rebellious attitude and unwillingness to accept theocratic direction marked me as spiritually dangerous. They gave me a choice: recant completely, never speak of my questions again, and submit to spiritual counseling, or face consequences. I should have backed down. I should have said whatever they wanted to hear. But something inside me, something that had been growing for years, refused. Martha had been gone for 6 months at that point. Without her gentle pressure to conform, without her worried looks when I studied too deeply, I found I couldn't lie anymore. "I just want to know the truth," I said. "The real truth. Isn't that what we're supposed to seek?" They disfellowshipped me. Spiritually executed me in front of the congregation I had served for decades. My children sat in those chairs and listened to the announcement, "Warren Holloway is no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses." They knew what that meant. From that moment on, they were instructed not to speak to me, not to accept my phone calls, not to let me see my grandchildren. I was dead to them. Michael tried to explain it to me, the last time we spoke. He stood in my doorway, wouldn't come inside, wouldn't even step across the threshold. "Dad, you know what the Bible says. We have to be loyal to Jehovah's organization. If you're fighting against the truth, we can't associate with you. It's for your own good. Maybe losing your family will wake you up and bring you back." "Michael," I said, my voice breaking, "I'm not fighting anything. I just asked a question." "That's how it starts," he said, and there was fear in his eyes. Real fear. That's how Satan gets in. I love you, Dad, but I love Jehovah more. We all do. Then he left. That was 2 years and 4 months ago. I haven't heard his voice since. Sarah cut me off even more quickly. She sent a text message, which I still have saved on my old flip phone. Dad, what you're doing is selfish. You're choosing your pride over your family. We need to protect ourselves and the kids from apostate influences. Don't contact us again. And just like that, I lost everything. My wife to death, my children to doctrine, my entire social network to organizational loyalty. Every friend I had made in 47 years was a witness. When I was disfellowshipped, they all vanished. I would see them at the grocery store, and they would literally turn their backs. Once, I ran into Sister Peters, who I had known for 20 years. I said hello. She looked right through me as if I were invisible and walked away. The loneliness is a physical thing. It sits in my chest like a stone. Some days I go without speaking to another human being. I watch television, I read books, I take walks around the neighborhood. I have tried to make new friends, but at 73, after a lifetime of being told that worldly people were dangerous, it isn't easy. Most days, I sit in Martha's old chair and wonder if I made the right choice. Would it have been so bad to just agree, to nod and smile and keep my questions to myself? Would having my children in my life be worth the cost of intellectual honesty? I don't know. I still don't know. The house is too quiet. It echoes with the absence of voices, the absence of life. I keep the photographs up because taking them down would feel like admitting they're really gone. Sometimes I talk to them, to those frozen faces. Michael, I say, you got your mother's stubbornness. Sarah, you were always the sensitive one. Do you ever think of me? Do you ever wonder if maybe, just maybe, Dad wasn't crazy? They never answer. It was a Tuesday morning in late September when my phone rang. I almost didn't answer. I get so few calls now that the sound startles me. Usually it's just telemarketers or wrong numbers. But something made me pick up. Uncle Warren? It's Robert. Robert. My cousin's son. We hadn't spoken in years, though he had never been as devout as the rest of the family. I heard he had faded from the organization, stopped attending meetings. That made him safe to talk to, technically, though we had never been close. Robert, I said, surprised. Is everything all right? There was a pause. I'm sorry to tell you this over the phone, but Uncle Thomas passed away. Yesterday. Heart attack. It was sudden. The room tilted. Thomas. My brother. We had been inseparable as children, had pioneered together, had raised our families in parallel. We were only 2 years apart. After I was disfellowshipped, he had stopped speaking to me too. The last time I saw him was at the grocery store, 8 months ago. I had tried to say hello, to ask how he was doing. He had looked at me with such coldness, such contempt, that I had actually stepped backward. Thank you for telling me, I managed to say. There's going to be a memorial service, Robert continued, and then a will reading. But Uncle Warren. His voice became uncomfortable. I wanted to give you a heads up. Aunt Diane said that you wouldn't be welcome at the will reading. She said it would be too uncomfortable, having someone who's not in the faith anymore. I'm sorry. I think it's wrong, but I understand, I said, though I didn't. Or maybe I understood too well. Even in death, Thomas couldn't forgive me for my apostasy. Even in death, I would be excluded from my own family. I really am sorry, Robert said. For what it's worth, I think the whole shunning thing is cruel. I don't believe in it anymore. But the rest of the family. It's all right, Robert. Thank you for calling. After I hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. My brother was dead. My last blood relative in his generation, gone. And I wasn't allowed to be present for the reading of his will. The insult of it, the casual cruelty, struck me harder than I expected. I had left the organization. I had asked questions. That was my crime. And for that, I wasn't even allowed the basic dignity of being present when my brother's final wishes were revealed. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Thomas, about our childhood, about all the years we spent together. I remembered how we used to sneak out after meeting on summer evenings to catch fireflies. How we had both gotten baptized at the same district convention in 1963. How he had been my best man at my wedding, and I at his. Gone. All of it gone. Not because he died, but because a magazine publishing company in New York decided that asking questions was an unforgivable sin. Something broke in me that night. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a quiet crack, like ice giving way beneath weight. I realized I was angry. After all these years of trying to understand, trying to accept my fate, trying to believe that maybe they were right and I was wrong, I was finally fully angry. They had taken my family. They had taken my friends. They had taken 47 years of my life. And now they were taking my right to say goodbye to my own brother. I got out of bed at 3 in the morning and went to the attic. I don't know what I was looking for. Answers, maybe. Or evidence that my life hadn't been a complete waste. I pulled down boxes I hadn't touched in years, boxes full of old Watchtower magazines, convention badges, notes from talks I had given. The detritus of a life lived in service to something I no longer believed in. And then I found it. A small wooden box, tucked behind a stack of bound volumes. I didn't recognize it at first. When I opened it, I found letters. Personal correspondence. Some between Martha and me from when we were courting. Some from my children when they were young. And there, at the bottom, beneath everything else, was an envelope with the return address. Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, Brooklyn, New York. The envelope was old, yellowed with age. The date on the postmark was June 1978. And the edges of the letter inside were burned, charred black, as if someone had held it over a flame and then thought better of it. My hands shook as I pulled it out. The letter was typed on official Watchtower stationery. Even after all these years, even burned and brittle, the header was clear. The familiar Watchtower logo, the Brooklyn address. It was addressed to Body of Elders, Cleveland Central Congregation. As I began to read under the dim attic light, my breath caught in my throat. The letter was marked, Confidential, Destroy after reading. Dear brothers, we write to you concerning a matter of utmost delicacy that requires immediate attention and absolute discretion. It has come to the attention of the branch office that there have been multiple allegations of serious misconduct involving individuals in positions of responsibility within several congregations, including your own. The nature of these allegations involves inappropriate conduct with minors. While we take all such accusations seriously, we must also be mindful of the spiritual and legal implications of how such matters are handled. The reputation of Jehovah's organization and the unity of the congregation must be protected at all costs. Therefore, we are instructing you to handle these matters internally, according to theocratic procedures. Under no circumstances should local authorities be contacted. Such action would bring reproach upon Jehovah's name and could expose the organization to unnecessary legal liability. Remember the principle of not taking your brother to court. These are family matters, to be resolved within the family of God. If accusations cannot be substantiated by 2 witnesses, per Deuteronomy 19 verse 15, the matter should be considered closed. The accused should be counseled privately, but no further action should be taken. Those making accusations should be reminded of the seriousness of bearing false witness and the importance of maintaining peace in the congregation. This letter should be destroyed after reading. No copies should be made. No record should be kept beyond what is absolutely necessary for congregational files, and even those should be worded carefully to protect the organization. We trust in your discretion and spiritual maturity in handling this sensitive matter. Your brothers. Signature illegible. Branch Committee. I read it 3 times, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. This was a directive, in writing, to cover up child abuse. To prioritize organizational reputation over the safety of children. To silence victims. To protect perpetrators if there wasn't a second witness to the abuse, as if child predators typically assaulted children in front of witnesses. My hands were trembling so violently I almost dropped the letter. And suddenly, I remembered. A night in late summer, 1978. I had gone to Thomas's house to drop off something Martha had borrowed. It was evening, nearly dark. Thomas was in the backyard. I could see the orange glow of a fire. When I got closer, I saw him feeding papers into a metal trash can, burning them. "Thomas," I had called out. "What are you doing?" He had jumped, startled. His face was strange in the firelight, guilty somehow. "Oh, Warren. Just getting rid of some old papers. Congregation records. Outdated stuff." I had thought nothing of it at the time. Thomas was an elder. He sometimes brought congregation documents home. It seemed normal. But now I understood. He had been burning letters. This letter, or ones like it. Destroying evidence. Following orders. I thought about my brother, the man I had admired my whole life. Had he known? Had he been aware that the organization was actively covering up abuse? Had he participated in it? The burned edges of the letter told me everything. He had tried to destroy it. He had held it over the flame. But something, conscience, fear, uncertainty, had made him pull it back. He had saved it, hidden it, perhaps as insurance or perhaps because some part of him knew it was wrong. And then he had hidden it away and forgotten about it. Or pretended to forget. I sat in that cold attic until dawn broke, just holding that letter, staring at those typed words. 4 years, the elders had told me I was wrong to question. They had called me proud, rebellious, dangerous. They had said I was allowing Satan to deceive me. But here was proof. Documentary proof that the organization I had given my life to, the organization that claimed to be God's sole channel of truth, was actively engaged in covering up the worst kind of evil. Proof that they valued their reputation more than the welfare of children. Proof that they were willing to sacrifice the innocent to protect the institution. I thought of all the times I had defended the organization to worldly people who criticized it. All the times I had insisted that any problems were the fault of imperfect individuals, not systemic issues. All the times I had preached that Jehovah's organization was uniquely clean, uniquely moral, uniquely protected by God. I had been a fool. A well-meaning, sincere fool, but a fool nonetheless. The anger I had felt the night before crystallized into something else. Not rage, exactly. Something colder. Clarity, maybe. Purpose. They had taken everything from me for asking questions. They had branded me an apostate, destroyed my family, left me alone to die in isolation. All because I wanted to understand, to seek truth. Well, I had found truth. And they weren't going to like it. The will reading was scheduled for the following Friday at the law offices of Patterson and Associates. I received no formal notification, of course. Robert had texted me the details, apologizing again for my exclusion. I spent the week making copies of the letter. I went to the library, one of the few places I felt comfortable now, and used their copier to make clear, legible duplicates. I made 10 copies in total. Then I scanned it and saved a digital version to my email, just to be safe. On Friday morning, I woke up with a strange sense of calm. I made my coffee, sat in Martha's chair, and looked at the original letter one more time. Part of me whispered that I should just let it go. That sending this letter would accomplish nothing except causing more pain. That my family would never believe me anyway. That I would be accused of forging it, of lying, of being a bitter old man trying to hurt the organization that had righteously removed him. But another part of me, the part that had been growing stronger since Thomas's death, said, no. No more silence. No more protecting them. If they want to exclude me, fine. But they'll know why. They'll see what I saw. They'll have to make a choice, armed with real information instead of propaganda. I addressed envelopes to the law firm, to Michael, to Sarah, to my sister-in-law Diane, to Elder Robertson, to Elder Jenkins, to the Kingdom Hall. I included the original letter for the law firm, with copies for everyone else. With each envelope, I included a brief note I had written the night before. It said, "Dear family, you excluded me from Thomas's will reading because I am disfellowshipped. You believe I turned my back on the truth. But I never turned my back on truth itself, only on an organization that claims to possess it. The enclosed letter was found among Thomas's belongings. I believe he tried to destroy it in 1978, but couldn't bring himself to complete the task. The burned edges tell a story of conscience struggling against orders. You have called me an apostate for asking questions. But what do you call people who hide evidence of child abuse? What do you call an organization that instructs elders to protect predators and silence victims? I'm not sending this to hurt you. I'm sending this because you deserve to know the truth, the real truth, not the carefully curated version presented in Watchtower publications. What you do with this information is between you and your conscience. You excluded me from Thomas's inheritance. That's your right. But here is an inheritance the Watchtower tried to burn, evidence of their true character. What you do with it will reveal yours. With love, despite everything, Warren. I mailed the letters on Friday morning, timing it so they would arrive during or shortly after the will reading. I imagined the scene, my family gathered in the conference room, receiving their portions of Thomas's estate. Michael, Sarah, Diane, various cousins and relatives, all united in their faithfulness, all comfortable in their certainty that they had done the right thing by excluding apostate Warren. And then the mail would arrive. I wasn't there, of course. I'll never know exactly what happened. But Robert called me 3 days later. Uncle Warren, he said, and his voice was strange, you've stirred up a hornet's nest. Have I? The family is divided. Aunt Diane is furious. She's saying you forged the letter, that it's a lie designed to hurt the organization. Michael is standing by her. But Sarah is asking questions. And so are some of the others. My heart skipped. Sarah is asking questions. She wants to know if it's real. She wants to know why Thomas kept it. She's been researching online, looking into whether there are other cases of abuse being covered up. Uncle Warren, she's been reading things. Apostate things. I closed my eyes. I didn't know whether to feel hope or dread. Sarah, my sensitive daughter, who had cut me off so completely. Sarah was reading, thinking, questioning. Elder Robertson came to see me, Robert continued. He wanted to know how I got the letter to send to you. I told him I didn't, that I didn't know anything about it. He threatened me with a judicial committee for talking to you at all. I told him I faded from the organization 2 years ago, and I don't care what he threatens. I'm sorry, Robert. I didn't mean to cause trouble for you. Don't apologize. That letter, if it's real, and I think it is, people need to know. The family is tearing itself apart. Yeah, but maybe that needed to happen. Maybe blind loyalty is worse than hard truth. Over the following weeks, I heard fragments of news. Elder Robertson had given a local needs talk about the dangers of apostate lies and the importance of trusting the faithful slave. Diane had thrown away her copy of the letter without reading it beyond the first paragraph. Michael had done the same, calling me to leave an angry voicemail accusing me of being a tool of Satan. But Sarah was different. It was 6 weeks after the will reading when I heard a knock on my door. I opened it expecting a package delivery or a solicitor. Instead, I saw my daughter. She looked older than I remembered. She was 41 now, but she could have been 50. Her face was drawn. There were dark circles under her eyes. She was wearing jeans and a sweater, worldly clothes, not the modest skirts and dresses witness women typically wore. Sarah, I breathed. Dad. Her voice cracked. Can I come in? I stepped aside, unable to speak. She walked into the house she had grown up in, the house she hadn't entered in more than 2 years. She looked around at the photographs on the walls, at Martha's chair, at the life she had walked away from. I'm not here officially, she said. If anyone asks, I was never here. I could be disfellowshipped just for talking to you. Then why? Because I need to know. She turned to face me, and her eyes were full of tears. I need to know if that letter is real. I need to know if the organization I've built my entire life around, the organization I cut my own father off for, is really what you say it is. I led her to the couch. We sat. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. It's real, I finally said. I found it in the attic. Thomas tried to burn it but couldn't. I don't know why he kept it. Insurance, maybe. Or guilt. But it's real, Sarah. I've been researching, she said softly. There are so many cases, Dad. Australia, the UK, the United States. Thousands of allegations of abuse that were never reported. The organization fighting in court to keep their database of accused pedophiles secret. The two-witness rule being used to protect abusers. It's all documented. It's all real. A tear rolled down her cheek. My whole life I've been told that this is God's organization. That it's perfect. That anyone who criticizes it is lying, is being used by Satan. But what if they're the ones lying? I wanted to reach out, to hug her, but I didn't dare. She was here, but she was fragile. One wrong move and she might bolt. When they disfellowshipped you, she continued, I believed them. I believed you were proud, that you were rebelling. I believed that cutting you off was an act of love, that it would bring you back. Do you know how many nights I cried myself to sleep, telling myself I was doing the right thing? Sarah. And now I don't know what to believe. If they lied about this, what else did they lie about? If they covered up abuse to protect their reputation, what does that say about their claim to be God's channel? How can an organization directed by God do something so evil? I don't have all the answers, I said carefully. I wish I did. All I know is that when I started asking questions, they silenced me. They didn't address my concerns or show me evidence. They threatened me. That's not what truth does, Sarah. Truth doesn't fear questions. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Michael won't listen. Mom. She paused, swallowed hard. Mom would have believed them too. She would have stood by the organization no matter what. But I can't. Not anymore. Not after seeing that letter. Not after doing my own research. What are you going to do? I asked. I don't know. She laughed bitterly. If I leave, I lose everything. My friends, my community. David will probably divorce me. He's already suspicious because I've been missing meetings. The kids. God, the kids. They're teenagers now. They're true believers. They might cut me off the way I cut you off. The pain in her voice was unbearable. I saw myself reflected in her, saw the terrible cost of waking up, of seeing the truth after decades of indoctrination. But staying would mean living a lie, she continued. It would mean going to meetings and pretending I believe, pretending that everything is fine. Pretending that an organization that covers up child abuse is being directed by God. I can't do that, Dad. I can't. Then don't, I said simply. Sarah, I can't tell you what to do. But I can tell you this, whatever you decide, you'll survive it. It's hell, yes. It's lonely and painful, and there are days when you wonder if you made the right choice. But you survive. And eventually, you find something they never taught us in the organization. You find yourself. She looked at me, really looked at me, maybe for the first time in years. I'm sorry, Dad. For everything. For cutting you off. For believing them over you. For not being there when you needed family. I'm so sorry. And then she was in my arms, sobbing like she hadn't cried since she was a child. I held my daughter and wept with her, mourning the years we'd lost, mourning the innocence that could never be restored, mourning the beautiful lie we had both believed in. But also feeling something else. Hope, maybe. Or the beginning of it. Sarah left that evening after we talked for hours. She wasn't ready to leave the organization yet. She needed time to process, to research, to make her own decision in her own time. I told her my door would always be open, no matter what she chose. I meant it. But sending that letter had changed something. Not just for Sarah, but for me. For more than 2 years, I had lived in a kind of limbo. I had been cast out of the only community I'd ever known, but I hadn't fully moved forward. I had existed in the space between, neither here nor there, neither fully witness nor fully free. I had mourned my losses, yes, but I hadn't yet figured out how to live. The letter, Thomas's attempted cover-up, the revelation of the organization's true character. It had given me something I desperately needed. Not revenge, exactly, though there was some satisfaction in forcing my family to confront uncomfortable truth. What it gave me was closure. Confirmation that I hadn't been wrong to question. Proof that my doubts had been justified. For 47 years, I had believed that Jehovah's organization was special, uniquely guided by God, morally superior to all other religions. I had believed that any problems were isolated incidents, the result of imperfect individuals rather than systemic issues. I had believed because I wanted to believe, because the alternative was too terrifying to contemplate. But belief built on lies, no matter how comforting, eventually crumbles under the weight of truth. The organization wasn't what it claimed to be. It was simply another human institution, flawed and self-interested, willing to sacrifice individuals to preserve its power and reputation. The men in Brooklyn weren't spirit-directed. They were just men, making decisions based on legal liability and public image, no different from the CEOs of any corporation. And realizing that, accepting it fully, was both devastating and liberating. In the months that followed, I started to rebuild. I joined a support group for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, people who understood what I had gone through, who had experienced the same isolation and loss. Some had been disfellowshipped like me. Others had faded away quietly. Some had lost their families. Others had managed to maintain contact with relatives who agreed not to discuss religion. Their stories were both heartbreaking and inspiring. A woman in her 60s who had pioneered for 40 years before discovering the organization had misquoted sources in their publications. A man who had been sexually abused as a child by an elder and told to stay silent to avoid bringing reproach on Jehovah's name. A young couple who had sacrificed their education and careers to serve at Bethel, only to be unceremoniously dismissed when they developed health problems. We had all given years, decades, of our lives to something that had betrayed our trust. But we were surviving. More than surviving, we were learning to live authentically, perhaps for the first time. I started taking classes at the community college. Philosophy, world religions, critical thinking. At 73, I became a student again, questioning everything, examining beliefs I had held for so long they seemed like facts. I learned about cognitive biases, logical fallacies, manipulation techniques used by high-control groups. I learned that questioning wasn't pride or rebellion, it was intellectual honesty. I made new friends. Real friends, based on genuine connection rather than shared religious obligation. I learned that worldly people, a term I was trying to unlearn, were not the spiritually dead, morally bankrupt individuals I had been taught to see. They were just people, as flawed and wonderful as anyone else. I even started dating, which felt absurd at my age but also strangely exciting. Her name was Patricia, a widow I met at the library. She knew nothing about Jehovah's Witnesses and didn't care about my past. She liked me for who I was now, not who I had been or who I believed. Sarah visited 3 more times over the next year. Each time, she stayed longer. Each time, she seemed a little lighter, a little more sure of herself. She eventually stopped attending meetings. David did divorce her, just as she had predicted. Her children, influenced by their father and the congregation, did cut her off. The pain of it was written on her face every time I saw her. But she was free. And she was finding her way back to herself. Michael never came. He called once, 6 months after I sent the letter. His voice was cold, formal. "I'm calling to tell you that I've been appointed as an elder," he said. "I want you to know that I'm more committed than ever to Jehovah's organization. Whatever apostate lies you're spreading, they won't work on me. I hope you repent before it's too late." Then he hung up. I grieved for him. I still do. My son, so intelligent, so capable, so completely captured by a system that would never truly value him. But I couldn't save him. He had to find his own path, or choose not to. That was his right, painful as it was for me to accept. As for the letter itself, it did eventually circulate beyond my family. Someone, I never found out who, though I suspect it was Robert, leaked it online to ex-witness forums and websites documenting organizational misconduct. It was analyzed, verified as authentic through comparison with other leaked documents, and added to the growing mountain of evidence showing the Watchtower's pattern of abuse cover-up. Did it change anything? I don't know. The organization is still there, still growing in some parts of the world, still telling its members that it alone has the truth. But maybe a few people saw it and started asking questions. Maybe a few elders read it and experienced a crisis of conscience. Maybe somewhere, someone chose to protect a child instead of protecting the organization's reputation. I hope so. I have to hope so. A year after Thomas's death, I went to visit his grave. I hadn't been to the funeral. Disfellowshipped persons aren't welcome at Kingdom Hall services, but I wanted to say goodbye in my own way. The cemetery was quiet, peaceful. His headstone was simple. Thomas Holloway, beloved husband and father, faithful servant of Jehovah. No mention of his brother. No acknowledgement of the complicated, flawed human being he actually was. I stood there for a long time, thinking about the boys we had been, the men we had become, the choices that had diverged our paths. I thought about that night in his backyard, watching him burn documents. I thought about the letter he couldn't quite destroy, the evidence of conscience that had survived his attempt to comply with orders. I forgive you, I said out loud, surprising myself. I forgive you for shunning me, for burning those letters, for being too afraid to question. I understand now. I was there too. I know how strong the fear is, how deep the indoctrination goes. You did what you thought you had to do. The words hung in the air, and I felt something loosen in my chest. Resentment I hadn't even realized I was carrying. But I'm glad I found your letter, I continued. I'm glad you couldn't burn it completely. Maybe some part of you wanted it to survive. Maybe some part of you knew. I hope so, Thomas. I hope you had doubts. I hope you questioned. I hope you died wondering if we got it wrong. I left a stone on his grave, as is the Jewish custom Martha had once told me about. A small marker. I was here. You mattered. You are remembered. Walking back to my car, I felt the autumn sun warm on my face. The cemetery was surrounded by trees turning brilliant shades of orange and red and gold. Life continuing its cycles, indifferent to human drama and religious wars. I thought about Martha, wondering what she would have made of all this. Would she have stood by me if she had lived? Or would she have chosen the organization, as Michael had? I wanted to believe she would have questioned, would have seen the truth. But I couldn't be sure. People surprise you, both positively and negatively. That evening, I attended my support group meeting. We met in the back room of a coffee shop, a dozen former witnesses of various ages, all trying to build new lives from the rubble of the old. Tonight, a new member was there, a young man, maybe 25, who had been disfellowshipped for being gay. He told his story haltingly, still raw from the trauma of rejection. His family had disowned him. He had been baptized at 12, had never known life outside the organization. Now he was alone, terrified, grieving not just the loss of his family but the loss of his entire worldview. I listened, and I saw myself. I saw Sarah. I saw all of us who had walked this painful path. When he finished, he looked around the circle with desperate eyes. "Does it get better?" he asked. "Will I ever stop feeling like I made the worst mistake of my life?" "Yes," I said, and I meant it. "It gets better. Not easier, necessarily. You'll still have hard days. You'll still miss the people you lost. But you'll build a new life, a real life, based on truth instead of manufactured certainty. You'll learn who you actually are, not who they told you to be. And eventually, you'll realize that authenticity, even painful authenticity, is worth more than comfortable lies." He nodded, not entirely convinced but willing to hope. After the meeting, I walked home through the quiet streets of Cleveland. My house would be dark when I arrived, empty of the family that once filled it. But it would also be mine, truly mine, in a way it never was when I was measuring every thought and action against organizational standards. I thought about the scripture I had memorized as a child, the one I had taught to my own children, the one I had quoted in countless Bible studies. John 8 verse 32, "And you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." For decades, I had believed that verse referred to the truth, capital T, meaning the religious system I belonged to. But now I understood it differently. Truth wasn't a religious organization. It wasn't a set of doctrines handed down from Brooklyn. It wasn't something that could be contained in magazines or enforced through shunning. Truth was simply reality, seen clearly and accepted honestly. Truth was acknowledging when you'd been wrong. Truth was asking questions without fear. Truth was choosing authenticity over comfort, honesty over harmony, reality over reassuring fiction. And yes, the truth had set me free. Free from an organization that demanded unquestioning obedience. Free from the burden of defending the indefensible. Free from the cognitive dissonance of knowing something was wrong but being too afraid to admit it. The freedom came at a terrible cost. I had lost my wife, my children, my brother, my community, my life's work. Some days that cost felt unbearable. Some days I still wondered if I should have just kept quiet, just gone along, just protected the comfortable lie. But those doubts were growing less frequent. And on good days, days like today, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 47 years of devoted service. Peace. Real peace, not the artificial peace of conformity and repression, but the deep peace that comes from living in alignment with your own conscience. I reached my house and paused on the front step, looking up at the stars. Somewhere up there, according to my old beliefs, Jehovah was watching, disappointed in my apostasy, marking me for destruction at Armageddon. But I didn't believe that anymore. The universe was vast and indifferent and beautiful, and I was just one small human trying to find meaning in the chaos. That was enough. I was enough. Even alone, even rejected, even disfellowshipped, I was enough. I went inside, made a cup of tea, and settled into Martha's chair with a book. Tomorrow I had a class. Next week Sarah was coming to visit. Life went on, smaller than before but also somehow larger, constrained by fewer rules but expanded by infinite possibility. The letter the Watchtower tried to burn had survived. And so had I. That, in the end, was the only inheritance that mattered. Not Thomas's money or property, but the truth. The difficult, liberating, undeniable truth. And unlike the organization that had tried to suppress it, truth couldn't be killed by judicial committees or destroyed by flames or silenced by shunning. Truth endured. And so would I. For everyone who has lost family to doctrine, for everyone who has been silenced for asking questions, for everyone who has chosen truth over comfort, you are not alone. Your courage matters. Your questions matter. You matter. And one day, maybe not today or tomorrow, but one day, the truth you carry will set others free too.